Hey, welcome to Deep Learning Explainer. And today's topic is ELECTRA, pre-training text encoders as discriminators rather than generators. It's a very creative way to do language modeling, or you can say like a language model pre-training or self-supervised learning. And what's so good about this paper? Their model called ELECTRA, basically, if you give the same amount of computational power, which is x-axis, their performance is constantly outperform these state-of-the-art models. This is the glue score, and the higher the better. It's a very difficult NLP tasks, and you can see it's like always, no matter what kind of computational power you give it, as long as they are same amount of computational power, same amount of data, this model ELECTRA is always outperform them. This is just the demos how powerful this model architecture is and how efficient it is. And they unlock the potential of everyone can access language model. Basically, previously, if you want to train your own language model, you want to develop some language modeling techniques, it's almost impossible to do with your home PC, with your home GPU. But with this ELECTRA architecture, you can definitely do that, because you can just train your own language model on your single GPU for a couple of days. They say for 2 days or a few hours, you can have a very decent result. If you look at this graph, they just used the computational power, which is very similar to the glove. You can see glove is like very, very computational light model, and their ELECTRA small just use the same computational power as glove and can get the almost 80% of glue score, which is incredible. So that's why you will want to really look into this paper. By the way, before we dive in, if you would like to receive more videos like this, deep learning or natural language processing paper explaining, don't forget to subscribe, because your subscription is my greatest support, and making this kind of videos is really time consuming. It requires a lot of preparation and research, and if you subscribe, you will give me more motives to make more videos like this. Okay, so without further ado, let's dive in. So yes, this paper is like published by Stanford universities and also a Google brand. And if you are familiar with the NLP field, you probably know Christopher Manning. He's a very famous Stanford professor, and he's actually originally a linguist, and recently I think he started doing deep learning quite a few years ago, and always published very high quality papers, and this is one of those. And yeah, let's see what happened with ELECTRA. So we will go through the overview first, and you will know what we are going to talking about today. So first, I will introduce some background knowledge to you. It's like, why should we have another way to do language modeling? And after that, I will talk about the model architecture of this model, and definitely the very interesting part is the experiment results, because you would like to know, is this model really better than the other models? Yeah, if so, what's the evidence? So yeah, I will show that to you as well. And in the end of the paper, I would like to discuss a little bit about efficiency analysis, because this model claims it's actually much more efficient than the previous models. But why? They actually do some ablation experiments, and that's very, very interesting. It's definitely worth looking into. And I believe by looking at that, it can kind of inspire you in terms of research ideas. Then you probably can have even better models in the future. Okay, so the problem with mask language modeling is there's definitely a lot of problem, and that's the majority problem. But before we talk about the problem, I want to talk about what's the mask language modeling. I assume you already know BERT. So basically, BERT is the way to do language modeling, and it brings so much success to today's NLP field. And most of state-of-the-art models are achieved with the BERT-based model, or just a variation of BERT. So how does BERT do? It's basically BERT trying to do language modeling, but instead of predicting one word at a time, it kind of masks 15% of the tokens in a given example, and then predict those 15 masked out tokens. By doing that, the model can learn how the human language is structured and the syntactic and the semantic meanings from the data. If you are not familiar with BERT, just Google it. And there are a lot of YouTube videos talk about that. And if you would like to know some variation or some different application of BERT, for example, BERT, how the BERT model being used in the BERT-based model, how the BERT-based model being used in chemistry domain, you can go watch my previous video. I will put it in the description below so you can watch. Okay, so since BERT brings so much success to us, but it also has some drawbacks. And one of the drawbacks is like it's actually not very efficient. You usually need a lot of GPUs, computational resources to train just one model. And it's not everyone has that much, GPUs. For example, if you are an individual researcher, you probably don't have that much, money. So how to find a more efficient way to do language modeling is actually a very, very important topic in today's NLP. And this paper is basically in the line of work to finding a more efficient way to do language modeling. And why this paper says the BERT is not efficient because you only like predict 15% of tokens, and the rest of 85% of tokens you just don't give any prediction for that, so it will not learn the rest of 85% of token, and that's just not very efficient. It's not very efficient. So the solution they propose is just to predict all the inputs, because for example, BERT, we may have the example, I have a pen, and in the BERT training, you will probably mask 1 or 2 tokens from this example and try to predict that. And this paper just suggests you to predict all of them, not just predict the mask one. For example, I have a pen, maybe in the BERT training, we mask pen. I have a mask, which is the answer should be pen. But the BERT model, we only just need to predict the mask token, which is pen. But this paper, they propose you can predict actually all of them. But how? That's the problem. So the way they do that is they do the replace token detection instead of prediction. So it's very, very interesting way. So basically, they have two different model. One is generator and another is discriminator. And so how the generator does is basically doing the same thing as the BERT. So the input example is the chef cooked the meal, and the model, the the training process is just randomly mask 2 tokens in this example, roughly 15% in general, and the generator is basically the typical mask language model. It's like BERT. So the generator will try to predict, oh, what should the first token be, and most likely it should be the. And what should the third token be? It can be definitely many ways, and the generators will not always predict the same as your input, which is answer. So sometimes it predicted slightly off, but it still makes sense. So the generators choose the word "at," the chef at the meal. Okay, and there's another model here, which is where the novelty comes from. So discriminator is called ELECTRA, right? It's ELECTRA. So this discriminator basically try to predict if this token is original or is replaced. So for this example, the mask token, the token originally got mask, right? Got mask, but the generator predict the same one as the input, so it considered as real, and the discriminator predict it as original, which is correct. So we can consider it's a right prediction. And like chef is like it didn't get changed, so it's same as the input. So the prediction original, which is right. And like this example, 8, which is got changed, it's different from the original input. So the discriminator do the prediction. So oh yeah, this 8 got replaced. It got replaced. So it's a replaced token, and this prediction is correct. So you can get the idea. The discriminator is in charge of predicting if this token is original or is replaced. Basically, it's just the binary classification, and it's very different from the way BERT just do. Because the original one, I mean the previous BERT model, the BERT approach, the typical BERT approach is just like we got a mask input and we try to predict the mask token. And this ELECTRA basically do a different thing. We not only have the generator, we also have the discriminator, and discriminator is our main course. It's our main thing, and we try to predict if this token is replaced or not. And in the inference time, we actually only use the discriminator as a pre-trained language model, and we kind of throw out the generator. So as you can see, the typical architecture of ELECTRA is just use a smaller mask language model as a generator, and there's some reasons which I will talk about later. Replace token detection. So let's understand this mechanism a little bit more. Learn from our input tokens instead of 15% of them. So as I said, the BERT just try to predict those 15% tokens which are masked. And this different model ELECTRA, the discriminator try to predict all token, if this token is original or replaced. And they claim by doing that, ELECTRA can learn or more of things from one example. Basically, you can make use of make the most of information from a given example. But I will argue that even BERT mask language model just predict 15% of the tokens, but it still got the input, right? The input include 85% of unmasked tokens. It still can learn something from that, even just predict the 15% of mask token. But when you get the input, you still need to understand the 85% of unmasked tokens in order to predict the rest of a 15 mask token. So they will also learn something from that. It's not just totally waste of them. I actually have the dub of this paper, and it's actually interesting because when I first read this paper, I just read the first part of the paper. It didn't mention It just say, oh, it actually is more efficient because of this. And when I was sleeping, I was actually in the bed, I was thinking, then that doesn't make sense, because the mask language model can still learn like from the rest of 85% tokens. And actually, in the second part of the paper, actually address this problem. They say actually BERT mask language model also can learn from the rest of 85% of tokens. So they will give some explanation for that. That's interesting. Yeah. And they claim when you use the replace token detection, your model will have more compute efficient. Will be more compute efficient, and it will also be more parameter efficient, which I will cover later. And more importantly, they also improve the downstream task performance. That will be shown in the experiment section. So the ELECTRA is basic acronym of this model, and it gives if you give the same model size, same data size, and the same compute resource, it will outperform the state-of-the-art mask language model based models. So I just too long. I will just call it MLM based language models. For example, like BERT and the XLNet, which are state-of-the-art previously. And it says actually the state-of-the-art for squad dataset 2.0, which is very, very tremendous result, because squad dataset 2.0 is quite difficult, and it's always the very important benchmark for benchmarking language models. So let's just look back to the model architecture. Yeah, you have a generator, you have a discriminator, and the discriminator is actually the main course. It tries to predict if this token is original or is replaced. And those are two very important components of this model. So I will introduce them one by one. So the first one is generator, the generator. So what a generator is in charge of, it's actually in charge of predicting the mask tokens. Basically the same as BERT, XLNet, robust BERT. Basically you mask 15% of tokens, and this generator try to predict them. And after they predict them, we replace those mask tokens with the one the generator predicts. And then we replace them back, replace back to this position, and replace the at, which is generator predict, to the mask. Then we use this as input to the discriminator. Discriminator just try to predict original. If it's original, it is replace. Yeah, it's very simple. And the prediction, you can, if you want to formalize this, basically it do the last layer is a softmax, and try to predict from the search space is all your vocabulary. Let's say we have 50,000 vocabulary, and the generator will try to predict, oh, is this which word is like most likely from those 50,000 vocabulary, and the answer is the, and this one the answer is at. So it's just a very basic language modeling technique. And this is the probability when you give the sequence X, the whole sequence X. Basically, you know what happened everywhere. Let's say if we want to predict the token, the first token, and we will have the information of the rest of the sequence. And for given those information, what's the most likely word for the first token? So this is what this formula is saying. If you are not familiar with this, you can look up some language modeling, self-supervised papers, or just BERT language modeling, and they will have some explanation for that. And so for the discriminator, it's most important part of this paper. So it's basically doing some, like, given a position T, it predicts whether the token T is real or is replaced. So it's basically want to say it's original or it's replaced. Okay, so they give you the sigmoid activation function. They just found out the sigmoid basically give you the best solution. So let's say we have the vector which is given sequence, and we want to predict the position t. So we put into the hidden layers, and so yes, the sigmoid here, and this is your input. That's hidden layers, including embedding layers, and the attention, the BERT transformer blocks, which consists of a FIFO neural network and the attention heads, and this is your output prediction layers FIFO neural network. Then you will have a sigmoid to predict, give the probability of this, if this token is replaced from 0 to 1. Yeah, and you have that. And they also claim that there can be one potential reason why ELECTRA is better than BERT, because your output layer is very simple. It's just basically a binary classification, true or false. And in the contrary, BERT model will need to search the whole vocabulary space. Basically, we have 50,000 vocabulary. Then the BERT need to have the softmax and calculate the softmax across all the vocabulary you have. So that's less efficient. But let's say this kind of is just a assumption, a theory, and needed to be verified in their future work. So let's see. Let's wait. Okay, so basically just to predict if this word is real. And this is the steps, because the algorithms actually combine a lot of different small components, and there's different kind of steps that you can do, and this is the standard steps. So basically, the mask language model will need to randomly mask the 15% of tokens, and annotate them as mask token 1 to mask token k from a given input. And the generator predicts original words, the original words of the mask out tokens. Basically, try its best to predict the mask tokens, and try to make them as similar as original one as possible. The better, if let's predict exactly the same as original one, then definitely that's the best. You have the best loss. And the discriminator, basically the objective of discriminator is to distinguish tokens that's replaced by generator. Basically is to say, oh, is this token is real or not real. So this is objective for generator, this is objective for discriminator. And if we combine these losses, then you will see the combined loss function, see as this one. So this is your mask language model generator, and this is your discriminator. And you can use lambda to adjust what's the relation between these two losses function, two losses. And yeah. And this sounds some places that's different from GAN, generative adversary neural network. Because in this case, usually again is like used in the image processing, and what again image GAN does is like one generator try to predict the image as real as possible, and the discriminator need to tell if this kind of image is generated by the generator or is a real image. So definitely, even you just happen to generate a very, very realistic image, but it's still not a real image, because like it's almost impossible to be like you can generate one image that's for every pixels. For every pixel, there's a same as the real image. That's impossible. But for the NLP, it's not like that's just not like the case, because you try to predict the token, the mask token, and that's definitely quite possible that you can predict the tokens as exactly the same as your input. So like this case, right? The generator predict the first token is basically the same as your input. So in this case, if you predict the same as your input, this token will consider real. So the discriminator need to predict it as real token. So this is very different from the GAN, and also the fundamental difference between NLP and computer vision. Because computer vision, the space, the search space of computer vision is much larger than NLP in this case, because the output is just the potential possibilities, is number of your vocabulary. And for the image, there's almost indefinite. It's not really indefinite, but it's really much larger possibility, combinations that you can have for one image. Okay, so the generator is trained with the max likelihood, and also the generator is now basically you need to combine these two things. The generator is trained with the max likelihood. So long as you can predict the tokens that's exactly the same as the original token, then you consider succeed. And again, it's not the case, because even you can predict a very realistic picture, but as long as the discriminator say, oh, that's fact, then you lose points. But in this case, it's okay. Even we always predict the same as the original tokens. The generator prediction, and the discriminator always gets it correct. You always say, oh, it's fake, it's real. It doesn't matter, because they don't have interaction for these two lows. These two losers. Okay, so generator, basically put it in simple words, the generator is not trained to fool the discriminator. It's not like GAN. Okay, so this is just the main introduction of the model architecture and why they want to make it this way. And now we're going to the very interesting part, the arena. Basically, it's experiments. We want to see how does this model compare to the other models, and why this model can have such gain. They will have some, analysis for that. So the first station for us is weight sharing. We want to know how much weight should we share between generator and the discriminator. Okay, so there are 3 different levels of weight sharing. The first one is just don't share any weight between them, and second one is we only share the embedding layers between the generator and the discriminator. And the last one is like share all the weight, only the last layer is different. Okay, so but in that case, it actually brings a restriction. Why? Because if you want to share all the weights, these two models need to be exactly the same size. So in this case, our main food is discriminator. If we really want to train a very powerful discriminator, we also need to have very big generator, which is not really economic. And they basically also did like experiment to verify this. If you don't share any weights, your performance on Glue. Glue basically is a natural language understanding dataset that consists of a lot of different tasks of natural language understanding, and the score is the higher the better. So they run the experiment on that. If you don't share any weights, your score is not as good as if you share the embedding. And if you share all the weights, you will find out, your Glue glue score actually is higher, but it's not much higher. And then you have so much constraint. Basically, you need to have the same model size, and which means your training time will be much longer. Because the ideal case is you have smaller generator, but you have the very big discriminators, which I will cover later. And this kind of difference is not even statistically significant. Okay, so the authors, they want to discuss, what kind of generator size works best. And they found out if you have like 700 discriminators, 700 this is kind of a hidden dimension size. If you have a 760A, and your generator's hidden dimension need to be roughly 1/4 of it, then you have the best performance. If you have 512 hidden dimension size for discriminator, then your generator's hidden dimension need to be 256, which is like half of the discriminator size. So this one same, it's like 1/4 of the dimension of the discriminator. So the conclusion is, if you have the best generator size, is basically like half, 50% to 20. No, it's like 25% to 50% of the generator of the discriminator size. So the generator need to be like half smaller or 1/4 smaller of the discriminator. Their experiment. They basically did this experiment to find out that. And also they have three different training algorithms. Basically, it's like they change the training procedures a little bit. So the first one is joint training, ELECTRA. So you just joint training these two loss function. And the second one is adversarial electron training. Basically, they use the reinforcement learning a little bit to let the loss function go cross discriminator and generator. If you are interested in that, you can look into the appendix of this paper, and I will not really go into the detail of that. And the two-stage ELECTRA basically is like they train a generator first for maybe n number of steps. Then after n number of steps, they start training the discriminator. And they found out if you use two-stage training, it's not working as well as the others, because their suspicion is if you train a generator first and somehow generator go too ahead of discriminators, and the example the generator generating is just too difficult, too challenging for discriminators, then you will not learn too good, because you just immediately let the discriminator to learn such difficult example. Doesn't make sense, and human also doesn't learn this way. If you are interested in this kind of incremental training difficulty thing, you can look into the curricular learning. Basically, it's trying to fit the example, simple examples first, and the difficult example. So this is something related to that. So they argue that actually joint training, just train them at the same time, is the best way, because the discriminator and the generator can kind of growth together and learn with each other. And you can see the glue score. If this is the computational power, the more computational power that you use, and you find out the ELECTRA, the standard algorithm is like consistently outperform the rest of 2. Okay, and this is a dash lines. It's BERT, standard BERT. So the main purpose of this ELECTRA is to create a more efficient way to pre-train a language model. And to do that, they kind of want to demo if they really have a very small model, if they can still have a very effective performance of the model. So they created a small ELECTRA small, and also create another one called BERT small, because original, even the smallest BERT is larger than the model they want to build. So they also build another, the BERT small, to compare with. So how does they set up the ELECTRA small? Basically, the sequence length, they reduce the sequence length from original 512, which is the standard sequence length for any kind of sizes of BERT, and they reduce it to 128, and like word embedding size also reduced from 700 to 100 something, and the hidden layer dimension size also reduced from 768 to 256. And interestingly, the word embedding size dimension size is basically the same as a light BERT, which is another optimized BERT. So they also create another one, ELECTRA large, to compare with the current state-of-the-art models like BERT, XLNet. The same size is the model size roughly the same as the BERT large, and the same model architecture and same parameters. They have the different kind of variation. One is like the train 400,000 steps, which is like around 1/4 of the RoBERTa BERT, the large RoBERTa BERT. And also they have the 1.75 million ELECTRA, which is similar to the compute of the RoBERTa BERT. And because they want to like make the state-of-the-art results, to do that they need to definitely make a larger model. But their original purpose is to have a very small model, and you can train it very fast, still have very, very decent result. So this is the focus. This is okay, the additional one. And to compare, they run a glue dataset, and because it's easier to compare with those models on the dev set. For some reason, if you want to know the details, you can look into the paper. And this is the BERT and RoBERTa BERT and fully trained RoBERTa BERT and the XLNet. And this is the compute resource they use. And the 1x means like the baseline is BERT. And if you have like 0.27 means like you just use the 27% of this BERT. And yes, this is also number of parameters. This is basically is the BERT, the large BERT, but trained on the more data. The data, the amount of data is basically is the same as the one the XLNet is using. If you want to know more detail, look into this paper. And yeah, you can see the results. They have the average score over the glue dev set, and you can see the ELECTRA BERT, large ELECTRA BERT is not fully trained, but still can achieve 89% of average score, which is really, really great. It's just slightly worse than XLNet and even better than the RoBERTa BERT, fully trained, which use 4.5 more computational power than the ELECTRA BERT, which is not fully trained. So you can see the computational efficiency is really high. And if they fully train ELECTRA, then you can see the computational power is roughly the same as a RoBERTa BERT, the fully trained RoBERTa BERT, and the XLNet. And you can see the average score, glue score, is much higher than RoBERTa BERT, and also higher than the XLNet, which used the more compute than ELECTRA. It's very decent result, very impressive. And this is the result on the test set. And you can see because certain reason some model doesn't have use the rank method for one task of this glue, so they don't have which the ranking mechanism for their task already be banned, so they kind of exclude their task. But anyway, they still have the average for the rest of tasks, and you can see the ELECTRA achieve the much better result in rest of the model. Even like the LIBER, they use 10 times more computational power, still cannot be as good as ELECTRA does. And also XLNet use more computational power, but got a worse result. So that's the way they demo how good ELECTRA architecture is and how efficient it is, because it not only achieves the better results, it also use the less compute. Okay, so they also run the experiment on Squat. Squat is the machine reading comprehension dataset, and we have 1.1 and 2.0. So 2.0 is like a harder dataset, and you can see, as you can see, the ELECTRA base, which is the same size as a BERT base, and have a very decent result. And if we fully train the ELECTRA, achieve almost the best performance in every aspect. And this is awesome. And if you just see the ELECTRA, not fully trained large ELECTRA, it's already on par with a lot of different models. So you can see how good ELECTRA really is. Yeah. If you are really interested in this comparison, there are more details in the paper. And so the conclusion of those experiment results is like ELECTRA architecture is really superior. It uses the less computation, no resource, achieve the same or better results on those NLP, NLU tasks. So now we are going to enter a section where I will discuss why it make it more efficient in terms of training parameter. There's certain reason, and this is how we call efficiency analysis. So to do that, to do the comparisons, here actually gets a little bit complicated. So you probably need to focus. This is the ELECTRA 15%, which means they own the loss function only accumulate from the 15% of the tokens they are masked. So if we go back to our original example, which is this one. Yeah, if we go back to this example, originally the discriminator have a loss function over all tokens, but because the authors, they want to know, does the ELECTRA's superiorities comes from it predict all tokens, or because of the other reasons? Because the BERT only predict the mask tokens, right? 15% of the tokens, and the ELECTRA predict all tokens. So they also want to make it similar to BERT architecture, just to predict 15% of them. So what happened is they only predict the loss of these mask tokens and also these mask tokens. So roughly also predict the 15% of the tokens, and they want to see what will happen, right? And this is what they call ELECTRA 15%. And there's also another one, replace mask language model. Basically, they modify the mask language models a little bit. And originally, when the BERT happened, basically is like you have so what the replace MLM does is actually they modify the mask language model a little bit, because they want to solve the discrepancy between training and fine-tuning. So what happened in the BERT training is you got the mask input, 15% of input is mask, and then you try to predict what happened, what the original tokens are, right? But when you really fine-tune BERT in the downstream task, you will not put this mask tokens. You will just put everything there. For example, you want to fine-tune the sentiment analysis model, sentiment classifier. Then you will just put your corpus, your example, with the everything that's just there, every tokens without any mask. Then till classifies sentiment as negative or positive. This kind of way to fine-tune the BERT. So you will not see any mask in your fine-tuning, and this kind of things does hurt the performance of BERT a little bit. This is already a well-known problem of BERT. So this ELECTRA definitely addresses this problem, but they still want to see how much this discrepancy actually affect the model. So they put this one, replace MLM, basically try to address their problem and to see if when they address, after they just solve the problem, will the model performance boost or not. If it boost, means this discrepancy actually affecting the model performance so much. Okay, so what does this replace MLM does is they don't just put a mask token. They don't put a mask tokens here. They actually put a replace tokens here. And the BERT model still need to predict what the red color token, the original token is, given the sequence here. But definitely some token is replaced, but you still need to predict the original one. So original one of this one is the. So the BERT model should predict the, and the original one of this is cooked. So the BERT model should predict cooked, then you will get a score. Okay, so they still only predict 15% of tokens, but the input has no any mask symbol here. So when you do the fine tuning, you will also have the same result, which is the over tokens without any mask. Okay, it's a little bit complicated. And another one is all token MLM. So what all token MLM does is actually, okay, by the way, I will not really call it all tokens MLM. It's actually replace MLM with all tokens. How to say that is like the replace MLM just a particular replace one, right? But the all tokens MLM basically they not only predict the replace tokens, they only also need to predict the rest of tokens. And why authors want to know from this? Basically, you want to know if the ELECTRA's performance gain comes from predicting 100% of input tokens instead of 15 or not. They want to know this, so they build this one. This one is like they want to know if ELECTRA's performance gain comes from the discrepancy, solving the discrepancy between training and fine tuning. So these kind of two different assumptions they want to verify, and the result is here. The standard ELECTRA has the 85% of glue score, and the all token ELECTRA has very high score, 84.3, and you only use the replace one. Basically, this one solves the discrepancy between fine tuning and the training and the score is much lower. And if you only predict the 50% of your output, which is the first one, 50% of the whole token, basically you only predict you only sum up your loss function over those 15% tokens, then your performance also low. So the conclusion is actually the gain actually come from predicting all the tokens. It's now, and solving the discrepancy actually just improve a little bit, because you see you can only improve the 0.2% from the BERT. It's not much. And as long as you can predict all tokens, your performance improve a lot. So what contributes most? Just like I say, the loss over all inputs is key. It's definitely key, and the most improvement actually comes from here. And removing the discrepancy, the fine-tuning discrepancies doesn't help that much. So yeah. And in the end of the paper, they also mention their gains actually they will have more significant gain if the model size is small. For example, they also train a smaller BERT, which only have 128 hidden size. And in this case, when the ELECTRA and the BERT both are very small, the ELECTRA is much better than BERT. It's almost like 8% more glue score over BERT. And when the model size increase, then the ELECTRA's gain is not that significant, but still quite high. And this is like improvement over BERT. When you increase the hidden size, your improvement over BERT is kind of a decrease, but still around 2.5%, which is still significant, I would say. And this is the computational power. If you only use the very, very little computational resource to train a model, then ELECTRA is much more outperform BERT. But when you increase the computational power, the gap between ELECTRA and the BERT start to narrow, but still like quite significant, I would say. So here we go. We have the conclusion. The conclusion is by distinguishing the negative example that's generated by the generator, actually improve the training process a lot, because those negative examples just not randomly replacement. It's basically replaced by the very, very advanced generator, which is the BERT architecture. So it gives us a much better compute efficiency and parameter efficiency. And by doing that, previously it's almost impossible for a person to use their home PC, home GPU to train the language model from scratch. But now, after the modification, it become possible. You just use single GPU, maybe you train for 4 days, then you can finish one language model pre-training, which is awesome. So they hope by making these kind of things, make the language encoders, or you can call it language pre-trained models, more accessible and unlock the accessibility of the research of this line, and also make it more environmental friendly. So yes, this is the conclusion of this paper. And if you came to this far, and if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, because your subscription will give me more motivation to make more videos of machine learning like this. And if you like the video, don't feel shy to smash the like button. And this is Deep Learning Explainer. Yeah. Other than that, have a nice week, and I will see you next time. By the way, if you have any comments or questions, leave it in the comment section below. I will go through them one by one. And see you next time.